It's the Full Throttle MotoGP podcast, and Dirk is here again to have a chat to us about what happened at Silverstone. Not a good MotoGP for the South African supporters, but nevertheless, as exciting as ever. Hello, Dirk.
Hi there, MV. Yes, it was. I think it was a very exciting weekend. There was a lot happened. We had a change in the lead of the championship, albeit a very small change, point-wise. Lots of action on track, etc. With Enya Bastianini stepping to the fore and taking a double win for the weekend, which is brilliant. I think it must be the highlight of his MotoGP career, definitely.
You know, I had a brief chat about Bastianini before we started recording. He was recruited to the Ducati factory team for specifically this reason, for what he can do, especially towards the end of the race. And he's only now starting to show that kind of form. And the question is, where was he until now? Why wasn't he performing? And of course, now he's been let go by Ducati. He's on his way to the Red Bull Tech 3, the new satellite team for KTM, where he's going to be joined by Maverick Vinales, which will be an interesting combination all on its own.
This is exactly why Ducati chose him. You know, that's why they put him in the factory team about 2 years ago. He's 49 points behind the championship leader currently. He's got this single win and 2 second and 2 third places already. So he's on the podium quite regularly. The thing about him is he's not a really good qualifier, so he struggles to come from behind, a bit like our Brad always did. And then he needs to fight for a podium and for the win. So if we look at his career and his history, you'll see that that's the way he rides. He's very good on his tires. He saves his tires. He looks after them, and then he builds up his race, and eventually when the other guys, when they start struggling with grip, he's there, and he collects the points. However, that doesn't really make you a championship winner. We saw that with Brad, as I said as well. If you can't really qualify well, you put yourself on the back foot immediately, every single race, and you have to fight just to get anything in the bag. Now, when he rode in the Moto3 class, which he did for quite a couple of years, in 2016, when Brad Binder won the championship over there, Enya Bastianini was the runner-up, but he only won a single race for that whole season. So once again, you see it happening there already. Then he went to Moto2, had a decent year, and then the second year in Moto2, he won the championship. He won 3 races over there and had a couple of other good showings, but it went right down to the wire to the last race before he won that championship. Then he moved on to MotoGP, first at the Avianti team, which later became VR46, but nothing much happened over there. And then he got the seat at Gresini, and that changed everything for him, to get a year-old Ducati with proper backing and in a nice team. And in his second year there in 2022, he had a very good season. He won the opener in Qatar, went on to win 4 races, a couple of other podiums, etc. Ended up third in the championship. And it's on the basis of that Lenovo Ducati took him into the garage of the main factory team. In fact, back then, Jorge Martin had a decent second half of the season in 2022, and there was speculation, why wouldn't he get the seat? But if we look back at it now, Martin was 6 spots behind Bastianini at the end of that season on the championship ladder. So it was actually just a sitter. However, this is the way that he performs. He's a really good rider. He's a very nice guy. It's good to see him up there on the podium always. But personally, I don't think that he has the makings of a true champion, that can be right up there all the time. It's a bit of a luck of the draw, and if conditions suit him, then he performs really well. And he should. That's the other thing we must remember. He should. He's arguably on the best racing bike in the world right now, next to Banaya. That Ducati, the GP24, is just the best machine that's available. So you really should pull finger and give us some decent results, or give his team some decent results, which could happen for the rest of the season as well. I think he's on a high now. That'll bolster his confidence, so he'll be there, at least on the podium a couple of times. Maybe another win or 2 will be great. So this could be his glory season in MotoGP.
But Martin is now the leader of the championship. But Bastianini maybe exposed a bit of a flaw. We've talked about this before, Martin. When you start putting pressure on him, he invariably makes a mistake, gives up
Yeah.
the lead to more than one rider in the past.
But as you said, yes, we saw pressure again taking its toll on Martin. I think what happened was he felt the pressure, especially after the German Grand Prix, the last GP just before the summer recess, where he fell when he had the lead. And obviously words were spoken, etc., and they told him to calm down, rather go for the points, which he did at Silverstone. But you can see when he's right out there up in front, he's fine. But when he has to fight for positions and so on, he feels a bit under pressure. It seems. We are guessing here, but it seems that way because then he does make mistakes. But he did the wise thing. He stuck to the second position, took the 20 points that was available, and ensured that he took over the lead of the championship on Sunday. So there's that.
Consistency has its own reward. That's just the way it is.
Absolutely. That's how you win championships.
In terms of Bastianini, I was watching the race, the main race now, and the fact that he started well and then started slipping back, and I thought he was out of the running completely. And then suddenly Bagnaia obviously overused his tires, especially his front tire, I suppose, and started slipping back. And then just Bastianini on the same bike just came into his own and eventually won this race. Now that sort of, I don't know what it says about Bagnaia going forward in terms of these two drivers or riders compare to each other now. If you can last and make your tires last better, then invariably you might end up winning. It's an interesting conundrum for Bagnaia.
Yeah. He puts it all out there. Especially if he's not, and that's his biggest flaw, I think. The chink in his armor is bad qualifying. He qualified. Once again, he didn't get pole position. Alicia Spargaro got that, last year's winner at Silverstone of the Grand Prix. And then Bagnaia was in second place, Bastianini in third, and Jorge Martin in fourth on the grid. Our Brad was in sixth. But he does have a good pull away. He has a good start every time, Bagnaia, which puts him right up at the front or in front. So, but then he has to fight to retain that position, especially with someone like Martin, who also likes a quick getaway and likes to attack quite early on in a race. So then he feels that pressure, Bagnaia. So he has to get out there and he has to defend all the time, which takes its toll on your tires. So there is that. I think by qualifying better, it'll remove some of that stress on him. Although, I mean, there's always pressure from behind, even if we're in front, especially if we're in front. So there's that. Bastianini just looks after his tires much better than anybody on that whole grid. That's obvious. So Bagnaia can take a leaf out of his book there.
The tire whisperer. Seen a few of those in Formula One. They tend to do well. It does make a difference. We'll talk a bit more about the race just now, but tell me about the sprint. What happened there? Brad, you just called our Brad. He did quite well there, and we had great expectations of him for the main race, but that we'll get to just now. But just tell us about what happened in the sprint race.
Yeah.
Bastianini won that as well. His first sprint race win, as far as I know.
Yes, in fact, it's his first sprint podium ever. So that also tells you something about the way that he rides. He doesn't like the shorter format. He only starts shaping after the 10th lap.
Yeah, of course.
And there you can see it. There's the fact that's his first sprint podium ever, but he won it. So well done to him. Well, as I said, we had Espargaro qualifying the first position, then Bagnaia, then Bastianini, and then Martin. But in both races, Espargaro just dropped way back. He couldn't get a good start, and the other guys just took over. Bastianini won it reasonably easy. There was pressure from behind, but he never really felt that it was quite clear that they had a good chance of taking this one. But what happened was, and with our Brad, as I call him, he got a decent fourth, which was 6 points in the sprint format, and that's always to be welcomed. However, once again, he benefited from both Bagnaia and Marc Marquez falling. Both were in the fourth spot, coincidentally, when they fell. And so there's that day. He has benefited from those two champions falling before and then creeping up, especially in sprint races, where Banaya doesn't have a really good track record. This was his fifth DNF in a sprint for Banaya, for the champ. So Brad benefited from that and moved into fourth. He said he had really good race pace. He felt good. So he thought that he was going to do even better, quote unquote, on Sunday. But that was not to be. He also had, there was a clash with Pedro Acosta. Someone pushed Brad wide, and as he came back to fill that gap again, Acosta tried to take it, and they literally clashed with pieces of bodywork and aero flying. Brad was it didn't have a huge effect on his motorcycle. He lost some of his tail aero, but Pedro Acosta lost the left front wing on his fairing, and he struggled afterwards with the downforce on the front, with braking and the handling, etc., especially at high speed and specific corners. So he dropped back and eventually finished fifth behind Brad. No, well then, which then took us to Sunday's race, where Brad is concerned. We really thought that he always likes to come from the second row, say, and he performs well from there, and he had really good pace. Then he comes on Sunday and he puts the best lap time in during the warm-ups in the morning. So we thought he was really in with a shot, and then he, well, didn't get away on the grid. Had a very, very poor start because of a technical problem.
Oh, he couldn't even complete the first round because he was hoping to complete the first lap, I mean, and then jump on his second bike, but he couldn't do that. What happened? What went wrong there?
Well, apparently, he says when they did the warm-up lap and he pulled up to his spot on the grid, he could, as soon as he engaged, pulled in the clutch, he could feel there's something wrong, and the bike started creeping forward. Slightly inching forward, which is the same feeling as if you're driving an automatic car and you let go of the brake, you slightly, it starts creeping forward. So he said he just knew immediately he was in trouble, and if he was going to struggle with the clutch. He put up his hand to indicate to riders behind him because he didn't want to get hit by the other guys. It was too late to swap bikes then, So he tried to pull away, but he got a very slow start as the clutch struggled to engage. And then the other guys just whizzed past him. He put up his hand. He then tried to, as you said, finish the lap to get on his number 2 bike. However, he couldn't even get out of first, so he had to throw in the towel, pull over, park, and that was the race for him. So it was a bittersweet weekend for him, a fourth in the first race, and then a DNF in the main race where the big points are. The net effect of that as well is that Acosta, who was 2 points in front of him, stretched that lead to 8 points now. His stablemate, but more worryingly for me is that Fabio Di Gianantonio is now only 10 points behind Brad in 8th spot. So he better shape up, or because the VR46s, especially Fabio Digi, they're looking really competitive now.
Well, I tell you what, it was a bit of a heart in mouth moment. I mean, when he put his hand up, he was just one of the back riders, the riders towards the back, almost hit him. It was so close there. That could have been a disaster. But anyway, the interesting thing about Acosta and Brad Binder for me is, once again, they're going to be teammates next year. It seems to be a bit of a thing developing there. I'm reading it.
I don't know. I don't know what the pit talk is. I don't know them, either of them personally, not even Brad. However, they're just being competitive. We have to remember that I don't think this will even fluster Brad. The fact that for example, Acosta tried to push him out and take that little gap. That's exactly the way that the Binders ride, both of them. When Brad was known for it, that especially initially on the Red Bull KTM in MotoGP, I mean, he went into the tiniest of cracks on the race course, and took little gaps, and other riders got furious with him for that. And he just said, well, he's just being competitive. It's nothing personal. The same with Marc Marquez. He does that, or did that ages ago already. So I just think they're quite similar in that respect. They have a slightly different riding style, but they're quite similar in that respect. So we're going to have 2 very aggressive KTM riders next year, competing out of the same garage, which is never a bad thing for a manufacturer to have.
As long as their personalities don't clash,
Yeah. I don't think so. I don't think so. He's really laid back, as we all know. And Acosta doesn't really get flustered, So I don't think it'll ever be anything personal for him. He focuses on the race, apparently. But talking about the binders, just a quick side note that Daryl, he in the Moto2 class did his best performance of the year, definitely his best. He started in 18th position and finished in 6th. So Darren is right up there. He was in this race, so kudos to him.
One rider that I like to follow, and I didn't see much of, was Marc Marquez. I saw his brother doing a battle with Espargaro, but what happened to Marquez? I mean, he's sort of always up there, but he was quite quiet, if I'm mistaken.
He's been struggling. He didn't have a good qualifying. In fact, to quote him, he said Friday's sessions, his practice sessions, were the worst that he's ever experienced. So
As a Ducati
there
rider
was,
or ever?
well, I think it was a referral to Ducati rider. I mean, but he really struggled. It's not quite clear why. He didn't have good qualifying session, etc. He worked himself up though into that 4th position until he pushed the front just too hard, and in the sprint race, and that was it. So he's in a bit of a dip currently, and I'm not too sure what it is. It almost seems as if the other bikes, especially now post recess, they keep on progressing throughout the season. They keep on developing those bikes, and I think the GP23 is just not keeping up. It could just be that. Because if you look, all the other GP23 bikes are behind Marc Marquez. They can't even catch him. He's the front runner if you look only at the GP23s. So, yeah, I think the honeymoon is over with that. He's right on that specific bike is concerned. And I suspect he won't be able to wait for next year, to get on the factory bike.
Yeah,
that's going to be something totally different.
He's teammate. Oh, the other one. Yes, they're going to be some exciting team matchups there.
That could be different. That could be different, yeah. And talking about Ducati, we also heard this weekend at Silverstone that the VR46 team they are going to be the official satellite team for Ducati. The role which Pramac Ducati has this year and had last year. Gresini is taking over. Oh, sorry, man, VR46. Apologies. VR46 is taking over that role. But more interesting is so Fabio Digi is retaining his spot there, and it's slipped out that, as we predicted a week ago, Frankie Morbidelli is going to get the other VR46 seat. It has to be confirmed yet, but apparently that is so. It's de facto. But what I found really interesting is that they said they are going to give the VR46 team one factory spec bike. In other words, next year, you're going to have 2 GP25s in the Lenovo Ducati team and 1 in the VR46 team, while with the other rider, which is going to be Frankie, will get this year's bike. He'll have a 2024 bike. So they're splitting it internally in the team. And when they asked Gigi Dellini, he's the head of racing of all the Ducati's racing program, even the super bikes. Then I asked him why. He said, well, they're losing 2 bikes. They're losing a full team. They had it split down the middle currently. They have 4 current bikes and 4 bikes of a year old, and they're keeping that philosophy. They're splitting it down the middle. They're going to have 6 bikes, so they're going to have 3 GP25s and 3 GP24s next year.
That's interesting. I wonder why they didn't choose Gresini. I thought Gresini would be the favorites to become the sort of satellite team.
Yeah. It could be who's riding. It could be who their riders are, who they pick to ride for them next year, that sort of thing. One never knows, It could be an Italian thing. VR46, as you said, if they take Frankie, they're gonna keep a fully Italian team. It could be something like that, that they would prefer to do that. We don't know what's going on behind the scenes. I don't think there's bad blood between Ducati themselves, the factory, and the Gresini team at all. But it could be they want to hedge their bet, sort of. And when pushed, Gigi said that they would like to use always a half of the bikes as developmental. In other words, they want to use them to keep guys coming in and then into maybe the factory team or into a level where they can get the current factory spec bike.
All right, just on that subject of development, I wanted to ask you, did we see any improvements on with the KTMs in terms of the tire chatter problems that they were having before the summer break?
I haven't heard anything. I haven't heard them complain about anything. And in fact, we should investigate that because Jack Miller did better during the practice sessions and qualifying than he has for quite a while. But because they weren't right up there in the running, we didn't really focus on their absolute performance or any possible problems that they might have. So at this stage, I can't say no.
Another interesting thing that I noticed is on the warm-up lap for the main race, they were riding extremely slowly, having all the poses, like this, but going very slowly. And apparently that had to do with excessive fuel consumption. They were worried about the fuel consumption.
Yes.
That's a new one.
It was not really. It's because Silverstone is a very long and a very fast circuit. So obviously you burn a lot of fuel, you burn more fuel, and they are restricted to how much they can put in. You also, every 100 milliliters less that you can put in, is a weight saver. So there's that. It was even more conspicuous in the sprint race, where they've got a setting, a throttle setting as well, a fuel conservation setting, where they do the sighting lap. They engage that, for example, so that they don't use too much fuel, and then they do the warm up. And then under full power they go out. But they did the same thing on those long downhill straights and so on. They laid absolutely flat to minimize the wind resistance. And after the sprint, a couple of them ran out of fuel, so they had to be pushed. They had to be helped. Enya Bastianini was one. Pedro Acosta lent a hand. A couple of the other guys, where they put their feet up against the other bike from behind, or the guy grabs onto the fairing and they get pulled back to the pits, so to the paddock area. So yeah, they minimize and they calculate how much fuel they should be using during a sprint, which is exactly half the race. It was 10 laps, but it didn't work well. They all made it past the checkered flag, but some of them barely. So yeah, they have to really look after their fuel. It's not as big a problem as it used to be in the past. In the past, we had guys like Elisha Spargo running out of fuel on the last lap, which is a travesty.
Okay, things are heating up. Who are the main protagonists now? It's going to be Bagnaia, Martin. Who's third? Who's fourth?
Well, we saw Bastianini's there. If everything works out for him, he's got the race pace, especially the late race pace, so he could be there. And Marc Marquez, never discount him. We can say whatever we want. He's just so competitive, and on the right track under the right circumstances. He hasn't won a race yet this year, and he would desperately like to win a race. That's for sure. Just in his first season on a Ducati. He at the beginning of the season, he said that's not his objective. He just wants to learn how to ride that specific bike, etc. But there's no way that he'll say no if you offer him a top spot on the podium. I think he desperately wants that. So he's always going to be there. And then guys like Espargaro, every now and then, Maverick would steal a couple of points or a podium spot, and Brad. Pedro as well. Pedro had a couple of decent races in the beginning, and then it started to drop off, as all the other KTM riders as well. They're all struggling because of the tire problems. But if they sort that out, they could be right up there on the podium once again. However, championship-wise, I think it's still a two-horse race at this stage.
Just remind me or refresh my memory about what happened last year. We know, Martino was leading most of the way, wasn't it? And Bagnaia came with a charge.
No, it was the reverse. Martin Bagnaia's season started dropping off in the last quarter, and Martin came right up. He only held the championship lead for a single day, for a Saturday, after winning a sprint. And then Bagnaia got his ducks in a row again and kept the lead. And they went into the final race at Valencia with Martin possibly winning the championship if he won it outright, and if Bagnaia wasn't in second spot. But it didn't happen. Bagnaia clinched the race and the title right there. But it was quite tight. But right now we see, I mean, we've only got 3 points between the two of them at this stage in the season. So things
Much
are going to
earlier.
get hectic, yes.
All right, what's next and when is that?
Well, we're looking at Spielberg in Austria in 2 weeks' time. So that's KTM's home track.
Red
So
Bull.
they will definitely, Red Bull's home track, they will definitely want to put up a good showing there. Most of the guys like that track. It's undulating, it's fast. So there's always good racing there.
Yeah, looking forward to it. It's getting exciting. I loved having a chat about this. Thanks for that, Dirk. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
We'll
See
talk
you
again
then.
soon.